What's happening, folks? Baz here. You're gonna have to pardon the background noise of airplanes near our airport. Um, the latest discussion is this Carmelo Anthony kid who did a stabbing on some kid at I guess like a track meet or some shit. They was at the school. They was on school grounds, and off the cuff, from how everything's explained, it's a it's an ugly predicament. But what I'm not getting is how people or finding a means to compare the situation to Trayvon Martin. Now, this is an interesting part, right? Because a lot of the people who are left leaning or gravitating towards this, they're they're youth, they're younger generation, So they're people who they might have heard things, during the time of Trayvon Martin or afterwards, but they weren't really they weren't old enough to understand what was really happening during the Trayvon Martin situation. Apparently, um, not at all saying Zimmerman was okay or right, because anyone who watched that shit knows Zimmerman was a monster and he should have went to prison for that. Um, but the situation between George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin was not the same as this situation. So in that situation, Trayvon Martin was being stalked by this man, and Trayvon was a minor, and the man stalking him was an adult. The man was on the phone with police saying that he's following this kid who looks suspicious, and then he eventually attacked the kid, even though the police told him not to. So not only did you called the cops, they told you to leave the kid alone, and you went and pursued him regardless of what you were being told to do, right? And you eventually killed him because apparently the kid, according to his testimony, right, the kid was whipping his ass. Pardon the airplane noises. But apparently the kid was whooping his ass, and so that's why he had to defend himself. And right. So how this compares to the Carmelo Anthony situation, I have no idea, right? Because uh, the kid, no one was stalking anyone in that situation. It was from how it was explained to me. They were on, I guess, some kind of track campus for school, and there was tents or something, and this kid was in the wrong tent. And then the person who owned the tent came and told him to get out. I have my own theories, but my first thing is, okay, so you know it's not yours, right? Now I don't know about other people, but if something's not mine, I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna use it, right? Like if I was a kid running track on that track field and I came across a tent that wasn't mine, someone gave me said something about it might have been raining that day, but that still wouldn't have been my reason to touch something going to someone's tent that's not mine. I might have looked around and asked, hey, whose tent is this? You mind if I go in it? You know what I mean? But to just say, yeah, I'm gonna go right in here and camp out, or off the cuff, you're in the wrong. And then when you're confronted by being in the wrong, you get, defensive. Like, how dare you come in and tell me that I gotta get out of here? Like, it's it's really weird. It's really absurd. But it more so makes me think, what was the kid doing? That he felt that he had to be so defensive. Usually, when you get caught doing something bad, is when people usually get defensive when they get angry or irate. For guys, not to be funny, but you catch us in the middle of maybe shaking hands with the president, and we might get a little irate with you if especially if we're close and you just ruined it. It's like, yeah, mother. I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but I'm saying he could have been doing it. They were on a track field. There could have been girls around. He could have been peeking out, cut a hole in the tent and peeking around. Like, I'm wondering, like, what made this kid think that he had a right to be so defensive about something that wasn't his. The tent wasn't his. You don't have a right to be defensive about it. So that didn't make any sense. And then the words used was, touch me and see what happens. Touch me and see what happens. Or something along those lines. Which at that point, that automatically makes you guilty. I'm pretty sure other attorneys had already pointed this out, but at that point, it becomes premeditated. Because at that point, you already know what your response is going to be if someone approaches, because you done said and then at the same time, the kid is putting his hand in his bag, I guess, to prepare his knife. And that's the next part. What what were you doing that was worth hiding and protecting enough to stab the kid. You know what I mean? Because now in this situation, you ruin both your lives. As far as I'm concerned, y'all were track stars. Chances are y'all were good students. You had things going for you. Now one life is lost, along with every person that's attached to that life, and the other life is gonna be seeing prison time. And all the lives are attached to his. Everyone's gonna be is gonna be lost across the board. You know, both sides of the family. But what made you? What brought it to that extreme? You know, why did you have to kill the kid? Why'd you have to stab him just because he told you to get out of his tent? Why was it that serious? And one thing that's unfortunate is, and you know, I always considered it, but it was only after like really seeing someone and being around someone that went through it that I was able to really comprehend it. And something that always bothered me, you know, not to be silly or not to sound like I'm anti, you know, prison or anything, but when someone gets years to their bidding, right? Um, Judges throw away, give years out, like whatever. Like you get someone 15, 25, 30 years. I don't think people realize how long that is, you know? I think when the judges say you're going to be there for 15, 20 years, I don't think they realize how long 20 years is. And if judges don't really comprehend that, chances are kids, teenagers, they don't comprehend it either, you know? And even as most people, we don't. I have a cousin who, I think he was away for about maybe 18 years. He was away for a while. And so last time I seen before he was locked up, I was maybe 16, and I hadn't seen him until my 30s, right? Well, what's 18 years of being away from society? Society changes. The neighborhood changes. The people around it change. Technology changes. The base rules are the same, but for the most part, there are a lot of changes, right? And unfortunately, some people, when they're in a situation for so long, we are creatures of habit, so we can adapt to any situation. So, you know, a stranded island with, you know, minimal food, but just enough for someone to eat. The first few weeks, that person on that island might be having it rough, but leave them there for a couple of years, and they're gonna have adapted, and they're gonna be fine. And chances are they're gonna have a hard time reintegrating with society because they're gonna be so used to this situation. The society's gonna be, you know, brand new to them. They're gonna be like aliens, and that's what happened to my cousin. You know, he was so used to 18 years of being in prison. You know, that became what he was used to. So when he came out and things weren't going his way or whatever, or things were a little bit rocky, something that he would do was say to my aunts and them, like, I'll just go back to prison then. And it's a guilt trip thing. You know, it's a little selfish, but see, winning it is someone who they're used to this situation. They've been in this situation for so long that they don't know how to reintegrate into society. And so when things are going crazy and they don't know how to handle the crazy back in society, it's easy for them to just retreat back to what they knew, which was, unfortunately, prison. It sounds morbid, it sounds horrible because it is, but it does happen to people. And I don't think people often consider that is how that you would think, you know, 20 years behind bars, you can't wait to get out. But shit, 20 years could be a lot of technology, you know? Smartphones, these things, they weren't around when my cousin went to prison. We had sidekicks and Blackberries. That was the extent of smartphones. And anyone who remembers them sidekicks and Blackberries, they were nothing compared to what we have now, right? They were cool, but nothing compared. And so everything around you changes. Cars change. Your neighborhood changes. Your family, you know, kids that you once saw that were, you know, way higher now bigger than you, and you really can't tell them shit to do because they're successful, they're good in their lives. You haven't been around 18 years, so you don't really get a say in what they do. You don't get to tell them what to do. You know, you don't really get to be the bigger uncle or bigger cousin because you weren't around. And that's just going off of what I experienced with my cousin, right? I'm not saying that to say he's a bad person by any means, because he's, at the end of the day, kid's a sweetheart. He's super selfless when it comes down to it. If you're a starving person or, you know, you're naked on the street, kid will take his clothes off his back and give them to you. He will feed you. He has no problem. Actually, he's the one who taught me how to cook fried chicken. I was like 8 years old when he did that. But I say this to illustrate what happens when, you know, people go behind bars, and what happens when teens go behind bars. When, you know, teenage years are still the development of your years. So when you go into your adulthood behind bars, that becomes part of your development. This becomes part of your, you know, your influences. We learn through life experiences. We don't just learn when we go to school and the teacher up on the board and teaches us such things, or when our parents say something over and over and over, or if we're used to hearing our parents cuss, everything is a life experience. So if you're in prison from 16, 17 years old for the next 15, 20 years, that's going to be your life experience, and you're going to go into your adult years with like that life experience. And in a way, you're almost already doomed to fail when you come back out if you don't know how to readapt to society. um I'm not saying that to say that the kid doesn't deserve jail time or that he should get reduced jail time by any means. I'm not saying that. My point though is more of a to kids to think ahead, think ahead that a really small and quick stupid decision could be the end of your life. And think about reasons why you don't want to do these things. Some kids unfortunately glorify the whole bad life. I have a nephew, unfortunately, who thinks that it's a good thing to constantly be in trouble with the law, and he's not getting it because he doesn't know how bad trouble could get. Um, I had a point with this and I lost it. Um, Shit, I really did lose it. I had a point. I was going towards it, but so I think. Oh yeah, that's what it was. So some kids they do glorify the bad life, whereas some of us actually glorify being good people. You know, uh, I remember having a discussion with a different cousin, and he's usually going on about his experiences because he's like 40 something, whatever, and he's always going about getting shot and all that, or going to jail. And when you're in prison, you gotta act this way, and when you're in prison, he was saying this shit to me as if he's giving me tips. And one day he's saying this shit to me, and I said, not for nothing, man. I'm not trying to be funny, but my wrists, they never felt handcuffs. Uh, Cops around my neighborhood, they don't know who I am. Um, Not because I'm some slick badass that just stays on the cover, but I'm not doing anything that would get me in trouble. And I kind of pride myself on that. If I'm not successful in anything, I can successfully say that I'm not a criminal in any way. The cops have no idea who I am. I'm not in the system. My name does not exist in their system anywhere. Never had court dates or anything. And that's what I was saying to him is, I don't mind hearing your stories and all that, but I don't ever plan on going to prison. It's not where I'm at. And as I say something, because we're on a stoop in Brooklyn, where the family lives. And I tossed with them over my shoulder, like that family behind me. If I ever went to prison, I'll be answering to all of them, and then my father, then my mother. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many people who'll be disappointed with me. I'd be more afraid of getting in trouble with them than getting in trouble with the law and or whatever happens in prison. And that's the unfortunate part, right? Is we as Americans, we forgot what honor and dignity felt like. Honor is taught overseas. Honor is a thing in Eastern families, and we make fun of it. But at the end of the day, honor and humility goes a long way. And in my situation, it wasn't necessarily just being a good kid that kept me from getting arrested. It wasn't fear of prison that kept me from getting arrested. It was honoring my family. People expected a lot of me, and me going to prison would disappoint them. That is what it is. I was more afraid of embarrassing my family than I was of going to prison. Not that I want to, but for that very reason, I'm not going to, right? Because I said, even to this day, at this age, I still don't want to embarrass my family. That's enough. That's enough to go off of. And I wish other kids saw it that same way. I have a mom at home. I have a father at home. I got siblings at home, and I like being around my little brother. I like being around my cousins. And if I go to prison, I ain't gonna be around them. They're not gonna like me the same. They might look at me different. You know what I mean? Things to think through. Things to ruminate on. Fortunately, my videos aren't going nowhere. So, whatever kids are hearing, I don't think any kids are hearing this. Any teens are hearing this. But the point still remains, and this is something that should be taught across the board: is humility, integrity, character. Uh, People don't even know what integrity is. It's not changing who you are for anything. It's not selling your soul. Keep to true to who your character is, and keep on a good mark, no matter what opposition comes your way, no matter what experiences you may have. And that's really what, when you turn the other cheek, that whole Jesus shit. I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not trying to put down Jesus or put him up in any way, but turning the other cheek, that's exactly what That's what integrity is. That's what, turning the cheek means, is having integrity. Is when someone cusses you or says something mean to you, or does something wrong by you, you don't have to get back at them. You could just not come out of your character and just go on with your day. It's so much easier and less stressful to not engage something like that, And in this kid situation, you were in someone else's tent. You didn't need to be there, and they told you to leave. It was. Did it hurt your pride to be told by a white boy, get up out my tent? Maybe, but how's your pride feeling now that you're gonna be in prison? You know what I mean? How's your pride gonna feel if you end up, being the bottom bunk? Yeah, I know what I'm saying. That 5 seconds of pride in that moment that you stabbed that kid, they ain't gonna feel the same when you spend another 20 years getting that pride dogged out behind bars. And all it takes is a little bit of humility, a little bit of integrity. Go forward with it. That's my take on it. I don't know how anyone's comparing it to Trayvon Martin. It's not nearly the same thing. The kid who was stabbed is not a Trayvon. The kid who did the stabbing is not a Trayvon. Just because there was a black and white thing going on, and it does not make it a Trayvon Martin. It's a different situation. Okay, the black kid did not stalk the white kid. The white kid did not stalk the black kid. Completely different. Making this a race issue, I think it's unnecessary, because I think any kid, I can't speak on the kid in general who got stabbed, but it's likely that no matter who was in his tent, if he didn't know the kid, black, white, whatever, what are you doing in here? Get out. It makes sense. I think anyone's reaction would have been that. The race of the person that they're saying to is irrelevant. That would have been anyone's reaction. If you have a car and your car's getting robbed, you care the race of the person that's robbing your car? Is that going to stop you from, is that going to determine whether or not you let them rob your car? Like, if you see a black man robbing your car, you're like, you know what? It's okay. He's a black man. He needs to rob the car. Versus if it's a white man, you're like, no, sir, you can't rob my car. Get out. You know what I mean? And then the person gets offended. They get defensive. How dare you tell me not to rob your car? How dare you? I know it's your car, but fuck you. I'm gonna rob it. Fuck you. Do y'all not hear the absurdity in it? And this is what bothers me with the left, is how do you not hear how absurd you are? How absurd you sound. I watch these videos back just to make sure before I post them up, I'm not saying anything contradictory. I'm not saying anything that's off the wall. I want to hear what I sound like when I speak to people. Do any of them really hear what they're saying and realize the absurdity, making it everything about the race, but then calling the other side racist for not making it about race, or trying to shut people down and quiet them because you disagree with them, but then calling them fascists, and that's the reason why they gotta be shut down. There's so much hypocrisy. Why is there so much? It's exhausting. Why are we still letting it happen? Why are we still entertaining it? Alright, y'all. I need to get to my workout. It is, oh shit, it's 3:30. I got a workout to get to. So I'm gonna do that. Y'all be well. Until next time, Baz out.